Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. Sometimes the most righteous revenge is walking away spotless from a scene everyone expected to see you roll in the mud. You see, there's a strange kind of poetry in how the universe works. It lets everyone underestimate you first. It lets the drama unfold, the rumors fly, the lies build up like a bad soap opera. And then, without warning, it flips the entire script. Suddenly, the same mouths that mocked you are quiet, the same eyes that rolled at you can't stop staring, and the same people who thought you'd snap are now whispering, "How did they stay that calm?" Psychologists say that in high-conflict situations, most people lose control within the first 90 seconds of confrontation. 90 seconds. That's how long it takes for the average person to turn dignity into disaster. But you, chosen one, didn't. You held your composure while surrounded by madness. You didn't let their chaos hijack your character. You kept your integrity steady while they were performing spiritual gymnastics just to get a reaction out of you. And that's what really disturbed them. Not that you survived, but that you did it with style. You didn't break character. You made self-control look cinematic. You didn't just handle the disgusting situation. You orchestrated a silent masterpiece right in front of your enemies without lifting a single emotional finger. It's almost funny when you think about it. They were throwing tantrums, and you were out there throwing grace like confetti. People are impressed not because you played perfect, but because you played precise. You didn't let their dysfunction drag you into their dimension. You kept your soul clean in a contaminated environment. And that takes a kind of mastery most people will never reach. You didn't respond like a wounded person. You responded like someone who understood the assignment, to protect your peace at all costs. So now the very same ones who tried to destroy your image are quietly studying your resilience like it's a survival manual. They can't figure out how you turned public humiliation into private evolution. But that's what happens when divine intelligence meets human ignorance. The result is always revelation. Let's talk about why everyone is so impressed by how you handled that disgusting situation. Because the truth is, you didn't just survive it. You rewrote the spiritual laws of composure itself. Number one, you didn't react. You restructured the energy. You didn't react. You restructured the energy. When everything around you screamed for you to lose control, you didn't. You refused to give the situation your raw emotion because you understood something most people don't. Reacting is how you transfer power, but restructuring is how you reclaim it. The moment they tried to provoke you, you caught the vibration behind their actions. You didn't focus on what they said or did. You focused on the energy they were operating from. Desperation, jealousy, insecurity, deceit. And you flipped it back into something that strengthened you instead of breaking you. That's not emotional intelligence. That's spiritual engineering. You see, people who operate from darkness need chaos to feed off. They thrive when you respond with anger or tears because it validates their manipulation. But you broke their system by refusing to supply energy to it. You didn't fight them head on. You rewired the entire frequency of the situation. You let their insults dissolve in your stillness. You turned every attempt at humiliation into a silent revelation. They couldn't understand why their tactics suddenly lost power over you, and that's where the shift happened. The same people who wanted to see you lose control started to lose control themselves. You mastered something rare, emotional transmutation. Instead of giving their negativity life, you converted it into understanding. You asked yourself, what are they projecting, and why does this need to pull me down? You turned pain into perspective, confusion into clarity. That's not weakness. That's wisdom disguised as calm. You became untouchable not because you avoided the storm, but because you learned to navigate it without getting soaked. The beauty of it all is that people witnessed it. They saw how they came for your peace, and you turned it into proof. You didn't expose them. You let the truth reveal itself through your composure. You changed the atmosphere without saying a word. When they tried to drain you, you recharged. When they tried to stain you, you purified. That's how you restructured the energy, by showing that power isn't in reacting, it's in remaining rooted while everything else shakes. You didn't fight fire with fire, you became the air that made theirs burn out. Number 2, you made dignity look like warfare. You made dignity look like warfare. You stood your ground with such quiet confidence that it shook people more than any confrontation could have. When most would have raised their voice, you raised your vibration. You didn't need to insult, prove, or defend yourself. Your poise did the talking. That's what caught everyone off guard. You didn't walk away defeated. You walked away undefeated in spirit. People expected to see you break, beg, or at least retaliate. But you stayed composed, and that composure spoke louder than chaos ever could. You made self-respect look like a weapon, and they weren't prepared for that kind of power. They thought dignity meant passivity, but you redefined it. Your calm wasn't weakness, it was calculation. You understood that shouting matches only validate lies, and that stooping low to be understood only makes you smaller. So you stayed still while they stumbled over their own drama. Every time they tried to humiliate you, you let their behavior expose them instead. The world got to see the difference between noise and nobility, and you were the lesson. You didn't meet their disrespect with anger, you met it with elegance. You turned composure into confrontation, the kind that burns without a single word. What made it even more remarkable was that you didn't just rise above it. You held your dignity like armor. You didn't pretend you weren't hurt, but you refused to let the hurt dictate your actions. That kind of self-control terrifies small minds because it shows maturity they can't fake. You didn't embarrass them. They embarrassed themselves by trying to bring down someone who refused to engage in their emotional circus. The more graceful you became, the more foolish they looked. It was poetic justice unfolding in real time, and everyone saw it. Dignity became your strategy, and it worked. You didn't have to expose their lies. Their own behavior did it for you. You didn't have to fight for validation. Your calm presence commanded respect. People are still talking about it. How you made restraint look like power and grace look like vengeance. You didn't just win the situation. You rewrote the rules of strength. You proved that real dominance isn't loud or aggressive. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly who they are and refuses to let anyone pull them out of character. Number 3, you proved that clean hands can still win dirty battles. You proved that clean hands can still win dirty battles. In a world where deceit is often seen as intelligence and manipulation, is mistaken for strategy, you chose the opposite route and still came out on top. You didn't lie, you didn't scheme, you didn't twist stories to get sympathy. You stood on truth, and it worked. That alone shook people to their core, because they were sure your honesty would be your downfall. They were counting on your kindness to make you weak. They underestimated the kind of strength it takes to stay pure in a situation designed to corrupt you. While they were playing dirty, you were playing divine. You knew that the loudest revenge would always come from the peace that follows integrity. You let your actions carry quiet precision. You made choices that didn't just protect your image, they protected your soul. You didn't need to expose anyone because time would do that naturally. You didn't need to prove your innocence because your character already spoke for you. That's what separated you from the chaos. You didn't join the war. You made the war irrelevant. People are shocked because you broke the rules of how survival usually works. Most people think that in order to win against corruption, you have to become corrupt too. But you proved that purity can outlast poison. You walked through fire without smelling like smoke, And that's what made people respect you differently. It wasn't the words you said, it was the consistency between what you preached and how you carried yourself under pressure. That level of integrity can't be faked. It's built through trial. Those who attacked you are now living proof that winning dirty doesn't last long. Their victories turned hollow while your peace grew louder. You became living evidence that righteousness doesn't mean weakness, it means endurance. You didn't rush to clear your name because you knew truth has a longer lifespan than lies. You trusted that what was built on deception would collapse on its own. That's why the outcome hit harder than any revenge could. You didn't just survive the battle, you turned it into a statement that a clean conscience will always stand taller than a corrupted crown. And now, they know it. Number 4, became the mirror that made evil see itself. You became the mirror that made evil see itself. Without saying a word, you revealed everything that needed to be exposed. When you stayed grounded in truth, you didn't have to defend or explain yourself. The energy around you did the revealing. People with bad intentions can't stand someone whose spirit is pure, because your calm becomes their exposure. Your composure threw them off balance. They couldn't manipulate your emotions or twist your reactions, and that's when the illusion started to crumble. The game only works when the target plays along and you refuse to participate. Every interaction with you reflected their motives back at them. When they lied, it bounced off you and came back louder. When they tried to provoke you, the silence they met forced them to hear their own noise. Your presence became a kind of spiritual X-ray. It showed people their own insides. That's why they grew uncomfortable around you. It wasn't that you judged them. You just existed in a frequency that exposed the fake. And the moment truth stands still, deception panics. You didn't humiliate them. They humiliated themselves by how they behaved in front of truth. You didn't expose their wrongs with your words. Their own conscience became the loudest whistleblower. That's divine irony. You became a living judgment, without lifting a finger. They walked away feeling uneasy, not because you attacked them, but because for the first time they were forced to see what they really looked like without their charm or excuses. People saw it too. They noticed that you never raised your voice, yet the truth kept unfolding around you. They started realizing that you didn't need to fight anyone. You just had to stand still in your authenticity. Evil doesn't know what to do when it can't hide behind projection. You stripped away their comfort by being consistent, calm, and real. And that's what made everyone impressed. You didn't try to destroy them. You simply allowed them to self-destruct in the presence of what's genuine. That's what true power looks like. It's not about control, revenge, or exposure. It's about being so aligned with truth that falsehood starts unraveling on its own. You didn't fight darkness. You reflected it until it couldn't stand its own reflection. Number 5, you let consequences speak louder than retaliation. You let consequences speak louder than retaliation. You understood that time has a sharper edge than any words could ever have. Instead of wasting your energy trying to prove your innocence or expose the lies, you stepped back and let the universe handle what your mouth didn't need to. You didn't react out of ego or pain because you knew that divine order doesn't rush, it reveals. Every move you made came from calm awareness, not wounded pride. That's why your story is now unfolding like poetic justice. Everything they thought they got away with is now catching up to them in plain sight. You didn't chase justice because you already carried it within you. Your clean heart, your patience, and your consistency became evidence of who you really were. While they were running from accountability, you stood still and let their own actions betray them. And that's exactly what's happening. Their words are turning against them. Their plots are turning on themselves. and people are starting to connect the dots. What was hidden in whispers is now echoing loudly. You didn't have to say a word. Reality is saying it for you. That's what makes people so impressed. Your silence wasn't submission, it was strategy. You trusted that the same energy they poured into trying to destroy you would return to them amplified. And it did. The masks have fallen, the alliances are breaking, and the truth is becoming too visible to deny. Every fake smile that mocked you is now trembling under exposure. Every insult that went unaddressed is now being replayed in the open, with consequences attached. The same stage they used to perform against you has become their own public trial. You've proven that real power doesn't chase validation. It lets time do the talking. You became the living proof that karma isn't mythical. It's mathematical. What you put out always finds its way back, and the timing is always perfect. You didn't wish harm on anyone. You just trusted balance to do its work. And now, that balance is serving you in full view of those who once doubted you. You never sought revenge because you knew the truth. Retaliation satisfies the ego, but consequences satisfy justice. Number 6, you exposed their filth by remaining unstained. You exposed their filth by remaining unstained. Every attempt they made to ruin your image only ended up polishing your reputation. You didn't need to fight for clarity because truth naturally rose to the surface, like oil over water. They threw rumors, manipulation, and mockery your way, hoping to see you crumble or react in bitterness. But all they did was reveal the contrast between your spirit and their intentions. The more they attacked, the more obvious it became who was operating from darkness and who was walking in light. You didn't need to defend yourself. Their behavior became your defense. You see, some people depend on dragging others down to hide how low they've already fallen. They tried to stain your character because they couldn't match your essence. But you stood firm. You didn't lower yourself to their level because you understood that mud can't attach to what isn't made of the same substance. You were built from something higher, from spirit, from integrity, from divine resilience. That's why every smear attempt only made you shine brighter. You didn't just survive the dirt, you purified it by refusing to absorb it. What makes this even more remarkable is that you didn't pretend to be unaffected. You felt every sting, every betrayal, but you didn't let it deform your core. You processed the pain quietly and turned it into growth. You became proof that reputation attacks don't destroy the righteous. They reveal them. People who once doubted you started watching closely. They saw how your consistency outlasted every lie. They realized that the more others tried to dirty your name, the cleaner you appeared in comparison. Now those who conspired against you look exhausted, while you look elevated. Their narratives collapsed under the weight of their own hypocrisy. You didn't need revenge, you just needed time. And time did what truth always does: expose, balance, and cleanse. You walked through what was meant to pollute you, but came out refined. You didn't glow because you wanted attention. You glowed because authenticity can't be dimmed by dishonor. That's the real miracle. You didn't escape the mud by running from it. You transformed it by staying pure in the middle of it. Number 7, you proved power is the ability to restrain yourself. You proved that power is the ability to restrain yourself. You didn't let emotions hijack your decisions or let anger become your voice. When everything around you tried to provoke a reaction, you stayed anchored in awareness. That's rare because most people confuse reaction with strength. They think yelling, clapping back, or exposing someone means control. But you showed something far greater, that true control isn't about domination. It's about direction. You directed your energy with precision. You knew when to move, when to wait, and when to let silence do the talking without it being submission. That level of discipline doesn't come from ego. It comes from evolution. You understood that just because something tempts you doesn't mean it deserves a response from you. You refuse to give your power away in moments designed to steal your peace. You didn't retaliate impulsively because you knew that reacting too fast can trap you in the very chaos that was meant to destroy you. Restraint became your strategy, not out of fear, but out of focus. You saw the bigger picture while others were busy playing small emotional games. You realized that people who can provoke you can control you. So you took back your control by mastering your reactions. That kind of strength confuses people because they mistake silence for defeat. But what you practiced wasn't silence, it was self-mastery. You learned that your peace is your most valuable currency, and wasting it on temporary chaos is the biggest loss of all. While others let their anger dictate their choices, you let wisdom guide yours. You didn't just hold back, you held higher ground. You understood that not every fight deserves your presence. Some battles are meant to be won by walking away, not by winning arguments. And people noticed. They saw how your calm under pressure exposed everyone else's lack of control. You didn't have to say you were powerful. Your restraint made it obvious. You taught everyone that the loudest person isn't the strongest. The most composed one is. Power isn't about showing how much damage you can cause. It's about proving how much chaos you can endure without losing yourself. And that's exactly what you did. You didn't just show strength, you became it. Number 8, you turned humiliation into humanization. You turned humiliation into humanization. What was meant to shatter you ended up shaping you into something extraordinary. They thought embarrassing you would erase your spirit, but it did the opposite. It expanded your heart. You didn't use your pain as a weapon. You used it as a lens. You began to see what drives people to betray, to lie, to hate, not to excuse them, but to understand how empty one must be to operate that way. That's the rarest form of transformation. When pain doesn't make you colder, it makes you wiser. You stopped taking their cruelty personally and started seeing it as a mirror of their wounds. The humiliation you faced didn't crush your worth. It stripped away illusions. It made you see humanity for what it is, fragile, flawed, desperate for validation. You realize that sometimes the people who humiliate others are fighting to distract from their own shame. Instead of absorbing that poison, you turned it into clarity. You began to see through people's masks, and that gave you compassion without naivety. You could now recognize pain disguised as arrogance, insecurity disguised as confidence, and jealousy disguised as judgment. The experience expanded your emotional intelligence far beyond surface wisdom. You didn't become bitter, even when bitterness would have been justified. You didn't close your heart, you refined it. That's what left everyone speechless. You showed that dignity isn't lost through humiliation, it's proven by how you handle it. They tried to reduce you, but the process refined you. You walked out with a softer heart and sharper discernment. You no longer needed to prove your value. The pain already taught you what you're made of. You became more understanding but less tolerant of nonsense. Now people look at you and see depth. They see someone who has touched rock bottom yet didn't become hard like stone. You became water, able to flow, adapt, and heal. You turned shame into self-awareness, and that's something no one can take from you. You evolved from victim to visionary because you learned how to use pain as education. You didn't escape humiliation. You recycled it into wisdom that now elevates you above the very people who tried to break you. Number 9, you proved that revenge is too cheap for royal souls. You proved that revenge is too cheap for royal souls. You had every opportunity to strike back, to expose the lies, to make them taste the same pain they served you. But you didn't. Not because you were weak or afraid, but because you understood something they didn't. Revenge is the currency of the small-minded. It costs your peace, your focus, and your elevation. You knew that engaging in pettiness would require you to step down from the throne you've earned through endurance. So you let them have their moment of false victory, because you knew time would make the truth louder than any retaliation ever could. What they mistook for fear was actually discipline. You chose not to match their energy because you recognized that your energy was rare. They wanted a reaction. You gave them a revelation that you operate from a realm they can't reach. You understood that people who live for drama eventually get trapped in it, while those who live in purpose always outgrow it. Your silence wasn't submission, it was containment of divine fire. You knew that not every insult deserves a roar. Some are best left to echo in the emptiness they came from. There's a difference between vengeance and victory. Vengeance wants to prove a point. Victory simply is the point. You chose evolution over ego. You refused to trade your crown for chaos. That kind of restraint requires spiritual wealth, the kind that knows your peace is too expensive to waste on proving yourself to people who already decided to misunderstand you. You didn't fight for revenge because you realized the real punishment for those who wronged you is having to live with what they did. Their own conscience became their courtroom. People are amazed because they expected fireworks, and instead they saw wisdom. You moved in quiet dignity while they drowned in the noise they created. You didn't need to destroy them. Their own actions did the work. You simply stood back and let the divine scales balance themselves. That's what makes your power royal. It's not loud, not petty, not reactive. It's knowing that you don't have to descend to prove who you are. You let grace do what wrath never could. Restore your peace and elevate your name without ever getting your hands dirty. Number 10, you showed that grace can be terrifying to the guilty. You showed that grace can be terrifying to the guilty. When you didn't fight back, they didn't feel victorious. They felt unsettled. They expected retaliation, insults, or some public collapse. But when you responded with composure and forgiveness, it threw their entire script into chaos. They couldn't process why the person they tried to destroy didn't hate them back. That's the haunting power of grace. It doesn't argue, it reveals. You didn't give them the reaction they rehearsed for. Instead, you handed them silence so sharp, it echoed in their conscience. Forgiveness isn't always about setting others free. Sometimes it's the mirror that makes them face what they did. Your grace forced them to confront their actions without distraction. They couldn't hide behind your anger because you offered none. They couldn't label you bitter because you were still kind. So now they sit in the discomfort of their own guilt, replaying what they did while you walk in peace. Grace, when embodied correctly, becomes a form of divine justice. It exposes everything ego tried to hide. You see, when you forgave them, you didn't release them from accountability. You released yourself from the burden of carrying their mess. You showed that peace isn't naivety, it's mastery. You didn't forgive because they deserved it, but because you refused to let their poison live rent-free in your spirit. That's the part that unsettles them the most. You detached, with no bitterness, no vengeance, no need to explain. You made it clear that forgiveness isn't reconciliation, it's liberation. You didn't give them access again. You just stopped giving them power. What people admire most about you is how your grace didn't weaken your boundaries. You forgave with your heart, but you still protected your peace. That balance is what makes you powerful. You didn't curse them, yet everything they did is backfiring naturally. Your kindness became their conviction. Your calm became the loudest exposure. They thought they won, but they can't rest, because your grace made their guilt impossible to escape. That's the irony of divine justice. Sometimes the punishment isn't destruction, it's awareness. And now, They live haunted not by your revenge, but by the realization that you were never their enemy. They were their own undoing. Number 11, you turned a public mess into a spiritual masterclass. You turned a public mess into a spiritual masterclass. What was meant to humiliate you ended up becoming a seminar in self-control, integrity, and divine timing. People expected chaos, a meltdown, a breakdown, a public war, but instead you responded with a quiet strength that spoke volumes. You didn't react, you responded. You didn't panic, you pivoted. Every move you made became a lesson in emotional intelligence, and even your silence had structure. You didn't just survive the mess, you turned it into a manual on how to rise above it. You showed that maturity isn't about pretending nothing hurts. It's about managing your pain with purpose. You didn't try to prove your innocence. You let your consistency prove it for you. You didn't argue your truth, you lived it until even the blind could see. And in doing so, you transformed scandal into syllabus. People started watching you differently, not as the victim of drama, but as the demonstration of discipline. They came to see that faith isn't always loud prayers and perfect days. Sometimes it's simply refusing to fall apart when everything around you does. The beauty is, you never tried to impress anyone. You just stayed grounded in principle, and that became your loudest message. You made people rethink how they handle betrayal, disrespect, and false accusation. You showed that real power is not in exposure, but in elevation. You didn't drag your enemies, you outgrew them. You didn't retaliate, you refined. You didn't match energy, you raised frequency. That's why those who once mocked you now mimic your calm. What was once gossip has now turned into guidance. People replay your story not for entertainment, but enlightenment. You showed them that you don't need to announce your growth. You just need to embody it long enough for the noise to fade and the truth to speak for itself. You became the walking example of what it means to handle fire without losing form. And that's why you won without even competing. You didn't just come out clean, you came out cultured by chaos. What was meant to disgrace you became your divine graduation, and now everyone who witnessed your storm has to admit you didn't lose anything. You taught everything. Number 12, you stayed human in a situation designed to dehumanize you. You stayed human in a situation designed to dehumanize you. They threw everything at you. Betrayal, mockery, humiliation, hoping to turn you cold, bitter, and unrecognizable. They wanted to see you break into something ugly, something angry, something they could finally justify hurting. But you didn't take the bait. You stayed human when cruelty begged you to become a monster. You stayed gentle when your pain had every reason to turn sharp. And that right there, that refusal to lose your heart, was the most terrifying and inspiring thing you could have done. You could have fought dirty. You could have exposed every lie, humiliated every hypocrite, and returned every insult tenfold. But you didn't. You knew that reacting like them would mean becoming like them, and you valued your soul too much for that downgrade. That's what most people miss about strength. It's not just surviving the fire, it's surviving yourself in the fire. You kept your empathy intact when others would have thrown it away for revenge. You chose to understand rather than retaliate. That's not weakness, that's transcendence. Even in your silence, your spirit was loud. You handled disrespect without letting it make you disrespectful. You dealt with dishonor without becoming dishonorable. You felt every sting of unfairness and still didn't pass that pain forward. That's how people knew you were built differently. You didn't need validation to prove your worth. You embodied it. You remained kind even when kindness cost you your peace of mind. And in doing so, you exposed a painful truth. Humanity is the rarest power in a world addicted to retaliation. Those who tried to break you are now haunted by the fact that they couldn't. Because how do you destroy someone who refuses to become what hurt them? You didn't lose yourself in bitterness. You found yourself in grace. Your humanity became your weapon. Silent, soft, but unshakable. You reminded everyone watching that true power isn't domination, it's preservation. You preserved your decency, your compassion, and your peace in the middle of dirt. And that's what left them speechless. You didn't just survive their cruelty, you outclassed it. And that's why now, even your enemies have to admit, you walked through their hell and came out still human, and somehow more divine than before. Number 13, you made the universe your defense attorney. You made the universe your defense attorney. While they were busy plotting, explaining, and twisting narratives, you chose to stay aligned with something higher. You didn't run to clear your name because you understood something profound. Truth doesn't need a lawyer, it just needs patience. You let time handle what tongues tried to destroy. You understood that divine justice may move slowly, but it never misses its mark. And now, people are witnessing that law in motion. What once looked like your downfall is turning into their undoing, one divine correction at a time. You didn't defend yourself because you knew that reacting to lies only gives them more life. Instead, you placed your faith in divine timing, the kind that exposes without announcement, that humbles without humiliation. You knew that your integrity would speak eventually, even if it had to wait for silence to fall. And when it did, the silence became deafening. People started seeing the truth without you ever having to say a word. It wasn't luck, it was alignment. When you operate in truth, the universe becomes your courtroom and the evidence builds itself. Those who tried to ruin your image are now watching their own reflections betray them. Their stories are collapsing under the weight of their own deceit. Because truth doesn't need to chase lies. It just needs to outlast them. You showed people that the most powerful response to defamation isn't defense, it's divine stillness. When you refused to wrestle in the mud, you proved your cleanliness. When you didn't react, you revealed who was truly unstable. And when you stayed consistent, you made every false narrative crumble from within. Now, you've become a living example of poetic justice, the kind that doesn't announce itself, it just unfolds. People are learning from you that the universe has a rhythm, and those who try to disturb its harmony eventually fall out of tune. Your vindication didn't come from argument, but alignment. You didn't win through retaliation, you won through revelation. Time stood as your witness, and truth served as your testimony. And that's why people are so impressed, because while others were fighting to be heard, you simply waited to be proven right. And the universe made sure you were. Number 14, you showed that victory doesn't always look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like peace. You showed that victory doesn't always look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like peace. You reached a level of maturity most people never touch, where winning stopped being about proving a point and started being about protecting your energy. You realized that some wars are traps disguised as opportunities for validation, and the moment you stop fighting for recognition, you reclaim your power. You didn't need the world to clap, you needed your soul to rest, and that's exactly what you achieved. Peace that no rumor, lie, or betrayal could shake. While everyone expected you to fight back, to expose, to get even, you simply walked away, and that decision unsettled them more than any confrontation ever could. You showed that silence isn't surrender, it's selection. You chose peace over pettiness, growth over gossip, evolution over ego. Because at some point you understood that not every ending needs a victory lap. Some just need closure. You didn't need to dominate your enemies. You just needed to outgrow them. And that's exactly what you did. The beauty of your handling was in how quietly powerful it was. You didn't win in the worldly sense. You didn't destroy anyone. You didn't parade your innocence. You simply kept evolving until the situation couldn't reach your level anymore. That's real transcendence. When the battlefield still exists, but you've become too enlightened to step on it. People didn't see fireworks, they saw freedom. You didn't win over them, you won beyond them, and that's what left everyone impressed. You made peace look like the highest form of power. You proved that walking away isn't losing, it's graduating. You taught that the loudest form of revenge is quiet elevation. While others chase closure through chaos, you found it in calmness. You didn't need an audience to validate your growth. The universe itself validated it through your peace. Now, everyone who watched your situation unfold can see that your calm wasn't weakness. It was victory in its purest form. You didn't just end a conflict, you transcended a cycle, and that's something only evolved souls can do. Win without fighting, rise without boasting, and heal without hatred. In the end, chosen one, what truly astonished people wasn't just what you went through, it was how you went through it. You faced betrayal without becoming bitter, endured humiliation without losing honor, and walked through chaos without losing your calm. You didn't just handle a disgusting situation, you transformed it. You became the living proof that grace can exist in the middle of grime, that restraint can be stronger than retaliation, and that peace is the loudest proof of power. You didn't need revenge to win. You became the evidence that divine order never fails to balance the scales. What they meant to destroy you actually refined you. What was meant to break you ended up building your spiritual muscles. Every insult became an initiation. Every lie revealed your light. You turned your suffering into sacred wisdom, and now the same people who misjudged you are learning from your example. You didn't have to defend yourself. Time did it for you. You didn't need to expose anyone. Their own patterns did that. You simply stood still in truth. And truth, like it always does, rose to the surface on its own timing. People are impressed because you've shown them what divine character really looks like when tested. You've shown that staying human in an inhuman world is a revolution in itself. You've taught them that walking away in peace is sometimes the most powerful kind of victory there is. You showed that when your spirit stays clean, everything that tried to stain you ends up testifying for you. You didn't just win, you evolved. And evolution is a victory only the wise can recognize. So now, stand tall in your light. You've graduated from needing validation to being living verification that God's timing, truth, and justice are undefeated. Your story has become a spiritual manual for those who don't know how to rise with dignity when dragged through darkness. You've turned pain into philosophy, chaos into clarity, and humiliation into higher ground. You didn't lose anything, you revealed everything. If this message spoke to your soul, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment your thoughts below, and share it with someone who needs this reminder. Because your journey isn't just yours, it's proof that grace still wins, that light still prevails, and that no situation, no matter how disgusting, can stop a chosen one who refuses to bow to darkness. God bless you.